All right, so welcome back to another episode of Parker X. And today you've got the three of us again, Brett Wood, Brett Calvin. My name's Lester Mascon, if you haven't listened to enough episodes to know all that by now. And hey, haven't done an episode in a little while. We've kind of just been doing some different things. And to be honest, today we're just going to kind of catch up and see what everybody's been up to. So what...
we call it a holiday special.
Yeah, this is the holiday special, 4th of July special. There we go.
We'll finish with a song and a dance.
So things are quite interesting here. The United States seems to have found every which way it can to create chaos in its day-to-day life. From a parking perspective, it seems that automation has become more popular than it ever has, and I'd say that we're surprisingly seeing a large amount of new systems being purchased and people looking for new technology. Touchless is all the rage. And if you don't support that by now, shame on you. But yeah, it's very interesting times to say the least. I was in D.C. just few weeks ago too, so I got to go see all that. The hotel I was in, I felt like I was in The Shining because I literally think I was the only person in the entire hotel. Me and the people that changed at the front desk. That was it.
It's weird because I've spent half of my life in hotels for the last 12 years, and I haven't been in a hotel for 4 months, and I don't know what it feels like anymore. So kudos for getting out there, right? Yeah.
You know, it was interesting. I went to go, and it was like, man, I kind of been liking not traveling so much, and I almost kind of didn't want to go. I mean, I knew I had to, and I needed to get back out there, or else it would very easily fall into a trap of not doing it anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm ready. Brooke and I have been talking about it quite a bit. We're both ready to get on the road and travel a little bit. I'm definitely ready to do some work and get out there and stop doing Zoom meetings would be absolutely fantastic. But I think we're getting there. We're obviously stumbling a little bit, but we're getting there. So we'll see what happens.
Well, this resurgence is challenging to say the least.
Yeah, there's much vaunted second wave of the virus coming through. It's happened, I guess, a little sooner than we all thought as well, at sort of the peak of summer rather than the start of winter.
So how's it going there? Because you Australia opened up long before
we had it
States
controlled.
tried to.
We had it controlled, and then one of the southern states, it's blown up again today. It's had its largest outbreak. 77 people. It's not 52,000, but it proportionally it's a big number, and it's got us again locked down and scared. So the borders have been closed between most states, and no air travel at all. But the economy's working for most people. People have learned how to do Zoom calls now, which was something that almost no one knew how to do properly, and it's amazing how good people have become at making sure they're on Zoom meetings on time and getting things done. I think it's a little more efficient, but it's definitely not as personal.
No.
You don't sort of spend the first 15 minutes having a chat. It's get in, get out, get on to the next one in a way that works but doesn't really work.
I think it works well when it's people you know already, but
Yeah.
it's a little more difficult when it's people you don't.
I did my first Zoom interview the other day for a project where, interviews are typically very personal. You're right there in front of somebody trying to build a rapport with them. And it's kind of tough. I knew the people, so that helped a little bit, but it's kind of tough to do, that kind of thing where you're trying to finish your sales pitch over the computer. So, we're all learning, but it's weird.
It's weird in a sense that the business is about car parks and traffic, and not physically being able to walk a site with a customer, or not doing it as frequently or in the way that you sort of traditionally would do, makes it interesting for sure. Also, we're looking at projections into the future and now really troubling. So what do things look like? If I was to put my finger in the air on what revenue looks like for for next year, it's tricky, and that's we've just ended our financial year 3 days ago here, so it's interesting to see how companies will project what they're going to do in the next 12 months. Councils, municipalities as well.
I tell you, getting rid of the people on site has been the number one priority from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And then any way we can limit contacts from every aspect with people has been a high priority for everything. I mean, fortunately, a lot of the stuff we did, like we made things like Apple Pay and Google Pay a standard. Like a long time ago, we just decided that was going to be how we did every system. And you had customers complain sometimes, going like, well, I don't want to pay for it. And it's like, well, I think you really need to do it, because if when it happens, it'll happen all at once. And I don't think anybody predicted it was going to happen this quickly. Just all of a sudden, just overnight, people are trying to convert.
Well, and it's interesting, you think about right now, like if you go back to March, we did one of these conversations at the beginning of this thing, and everybody just shut down completely, right? And what we're seeing right now, at least in the States, I don't know what's going on in Australia, but we're not shutting down. Like we're kind of fighting that urge to kind of shut everything down. And in places they may do it, but parking programs are finding kind of the groove that they can find to continue to generate some revenue, serve the community. And so a lot of conversations we're having right now are what does opening back up at 50% look like, and how do we sustain enough revenue to keep programs going? So I think we're going to approach this second wave a little differently, but nobody knows, and that's the troubling part of it.
I think
when these disruptions happen again, and how quickly they happen, because it can literally break out over a course of 2 or 3 days and completely shut a hotspot down or an area down. What's interesting also is if we were not prepared at all 6 months ago. Now we're somewhat prepared for a next wave, and the smart companies in the background have been thinking about it for 6 months.
Yep.
Investing in R&D, investing in methods of communication, really, to suggest this is what we do now. We've seen those touch-free sensors where that vend the tickets. Lester's talked about NFC becoming more of a priority. Bluetooth as well. We've seen all those types of technologies are interesting now, but the prevalence and the emergence of mobile-based everything, I think that's a wave that's coming along, regardless of the medium that it communicates, using your phone rather than talking to someone. If you can pay for your parking via your phone, that adoption's got to be going up.
Well, it's interesting because...
Sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting because for the years leading up to this, right?
Check out.
Thank you.
No, you go.
Brett. The Bretts are sticking together here, so
That's it.
yeah. So I mean,
leading up to talking,
Well, I mean, leading up to all of this, for the last 5 years, we've been telling people mobile pay, touchless, all of that is going to be the wave of the future, because it's going to get people into an easier way to pay, which reduces overall non-compliance. And now we have the greatest platform ever to get people into the mobile pay platform and use all of the tools associated with it. So I'm hoping that people are really taking advantage of that and getting people into the mobile pay, which reduces overall capital costs associated with meters and things like that, and really helps us dial in the right mix of technology to make payment and customer service work.
One of the states. One of the states here. One more go.
Wasn't me that time.
It's okay.
One of the states here about 12 months ago instituted their own statewide mobile platform for parking, and that enables them. You can go anywhere across the state, depending on the municipalities that opted in, have a single platform to pay. And I know that works somewhat in the US with different variations and flavors, but that, I guess, is something that ultimately some gorilla is going to come over the top and regulate that.
Well, it was starting to happen before. It was starting to happen before all of this happened, where we were seeing multi-app payment platforms in cities, so you didn't have to be beholden to one vendor.
I think we're taking cues off the technology industry in general. I mean, we're just trying to pack as much technology as we can and as many APIs and integrations availability. So we're just going to take away all of the, well, we can do this, but we can't do this. Well, we can do this, but we can't do this. Like our latest generation is like Prox card, MyFair card, barcode reading, Bluetooth, NFC. I mean, it's just everything. How do you want to communicate with it? It's all available. It all works. However you want to do it, we don't care. We're not going to tell you how to do business. We're just going to make it easy to connect all of it. And the prices come down so much on that stuff. You can literally buy single pieces of hardware, I mean, for very low cost that enable your device to be able to read all of those things simultaneously. It's very interesting. I've been having a lot of fun with it lately. I'm not that excited about the Wave technology, though. I keep feeling like people are going to issue themselves tickets when they're presenting their monthly cards or their phones or whatever it is. But we have adopted the nanoseptic button covers and screen covers. Those are good for a few months, and I think does the job.
It's a great little evolution there of when it first started out. I think people were having problems with the alcohol and what it might do.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the first concern. Don't put alcohol on it every day. You're going to ruin it.
Right.
But yeah,
Well,
I like that. Yeah, go ahead.
We also struggle with the fact that, like, how often can you actually clean these things, right? Like, I mean, you come and wipe down a park's exit equipment or a pay on foot station, and then you walk away, and then 27 people touch it, right? So like it's just it's ineffective. So
The nanoseptic covers on things really, I mean, look, I can't even take credit for the idea. We were walking around inside of an office building, and on the doors to the bathrooms and everything, they had for the push pad on the door, the place where you push on the door was this big square, and with a little nanoseptic logo on it, and it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. It's a surface that you can touch for 3 months before you change it, and nothing bad for you is going to stick to it.
When I first conceived us getting together, I was thinking we would do sort of a spitball session about when this is all past. What does it look like in 10 years' time? What does this industry look like? But Brett, you
time
want
out. Time out
on that?
Are you saying this is not going to be over for 10 years? I'm gone if it is.
That's it. We're gone.
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I mean, because we've brainstormed quite a bit about what evolutions will come out of this, and in a year's time, when this is over, hopefully, before that, hopefully, we'll see some changes. But 10 years out, I mean, we're going to see some really radical things happen even before COVID hit, like, autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, all those types of things, beginning to adapt our technology, adapt our policy, all those types of things. And I think we're going to now see a lot of those things accelerated over the next few years, where we're trying to think about ways to connect vehicles to technology that has never been seen before. And so a lot of things that we've talked about as kind of blue ocean strategies are getting accelerated pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's 100% right. I think we've done the quick stuff that we can in terms of touch-free interactions. Now it's at the OEM level of the vehicle. That seems to be what we're talking about. Connected.
So
vehicles.
what so I'm really conflicted over that aspect, right? So there's a whole bunch of people that are like, let's go for the OEM. We want to be in the dash of the vehicle. The last 2 vehicles I've rented, and my own vehicle, and the recent vehicle we bought, there's nothing on board anymore. It's all Apple CarPlay. I plug my phone in, and all of the apps in my phone that have a CarPlay equivalent pop up on the dash of my car, whether it's Amazon Music, Waze, Google Maps. Everything's now driven. My phone is really the intelligence behind it, and it's just giving me a different GUI on my car. So to me, that means that, and it does it for Google as well, right? To me, that means that pursuing the OEM route with the vehicles we moved past it.
Potentially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, you think about other, hardware for payment technologies. We've been moving towards mobile pay and those types of things. I mean, we're beginning to more likely leverage the consumer's handheld phone as the data point for payment, and it wouldn't surprise me if that now becomes the key to connected vehicles. We're connecting through the device in your hand, as opposed to the automotive manufacturers trying to figure out how to connect through their car.
Well, every auto manufacturer, they're all going to go to Android type OSs because that's the, same with the televisions and everything like that. It's easier to do. And you're going to have 50 different flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Where you could just have the two, the Google and Apple CarPlay. I think what's a Google, I forget what the Google equivalent is, but it's,
Google Play.
It's Google Play in the car?
Play.
Something
Google.
I think it's Google Auto or something.
Yeah.
It is. I turn it off every time. I don't want to deal with
else.
it. So.
The use of your phone and how that interacts with the vehicle, I think that's interesting as well in terms of your ability to track and trace and call up details of the vehicle. It's much easier to use the vehicle as the hub of the technology inside the garage than retrofitting the garage to make it work. I've brought up a couple of concepts just for us to chew on. I think I was thinking through that. This is one of the first ones, which is GM's Cruise self-driving vehicle van. There's a couple of elements to this that people talk about when they see this is, I want to be in control of the vehicle. There's something about always driving a vehicle that you would like to know, but this sort of thing, and GM are committed to delivering it, becomes something that works post-COVID now. Ride sharing is really not something that is happening at the moment.
Isn't it? Last time I went to DC, I rented a car. I haven't rented a car in forever. I rented a car. Last few times I've traveled.
Yeah, so these little automated vehicles or automated carts, I guess, they're small.
It's like the Johnny Cab from Total Recall.
It really is. It really is. So that
But
changes the dynamics.
I assume the premise of these things is, they're still, very much personalized. So you're not getting in there with a bunch of strangers. You're getting in there with, whoever your traveling party for the night is, and that could alleviate some post-COVID fears. But 10 years from now, hopefully we're not thinking about that anymore. We're just
no doubt.
Yeah.
Well,
but
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I was in an interesting conversation today with some folks, and the key to that working. Our parking facilities, the garages, we can configure the parkers equipment to communicate with these things pretty well. But if you're jumping in one of these, self, ordered trolleys, you're obviously probably not going to go into a parking garage. And so the key to the technology over the next few years is going to be, how does the curb technology interact with these things to know where to drop people off, what the transaction value is, what the stop point is, what the pickup drop off is. And I think we're struggling with that quite a bit. I think, you guys in the off-street realm have done an amazing job of creating a system that controls the environment that you're in. The on-street realm,
it's also a controlled environment.
Well, exactly, right. It's completely uncontrolled at the curb. And so those guys are going to be interacting with the curb, and how do we manage them? How do we keep them, moving? How do we monetize them?
Yeah, look, that's probably got to be on every city's mind, is how they manage monetization of the curb in this environment, because they must be losing revenue.
Oh my gosh, so much revenue, yes.
If you have a look at this concept drawing here, there's no on-street parking, and I don't know if that's deliberate or
I see
not.
one. There's a guy parked over there on the right.
He's picking up and he's picking up and dropping off right there. So right. So,
I see.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So there's
Now
two
one
things.
trolley's going the wrong direction. Sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
It's going. No, there's a logical. It's interesting for sure.
Go ahead.
And these vehicles, I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah.
Apparently
It's an
you can
interesting
drive
thought,
any
though.
direction in any lane in the future.
It's automated, man.
For those who can't see it, there's an accident going to happen, so a couple of things happen 10 years out. Population obviously goes up significantly. where people live change as well. So there's an ongoing movement in towards metropolitan areas. Don't know if that'll continue or not, but that increases the amount of people in the density in those areas, and so having these types of vehicles doesn't necessarily reduce traffic as it is today. It just enables more people to live more closely. The other thing, it's the lead we'll take from other places in the world, India, China, how they're handling their density and automation. I can see pretty quickly that technologies out of those areas where the populations are so significantly larger become something that we take our cues from and no longer start to take our cues necessarily. From Europe
that's
and
probably
the
a
US.
way that. Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
It is.
Now I want to do a whole bunch of research about what's going on in those areas specifically, so I can catch up. But what do you build today? Like if you're being tasked with designing something now that is going to take 5 years to get in the ground or 3 years to build from now, like what are you building right now?
What do you know to build? is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
first
right?
one, yeah. So you certainly have to look at and consider strongly a facility that you can use for different alternative uses coming down the road. If it's a structure, it's going to be there for 50 years.
I'm a pretty strong proponent of not designing parking structures to be residential or office, later on down the line, just because of the cost to do that. But if we think about this future, this autonomous future with shuttles and moving people in different ways to create facilities that are mobility hubs that can move people through lower levels in a quick way and get them out to the pedestrian experience that they're looking for is going to be critical. But also, thinking about how much am I actually going to build nowadays, right? Like, do I need to build 7 parking garages, or could I get away with 3 and kind of force people to be in a pain point for a few years before we start moving them out of their own vehicles?
I'll tell you, it's funny though. Like right now, right this moment today, we're dealing with, some facilities where, the tenant just wants a certain number of spaces per 1,000 square foot, and they're just not relenting on it. That's just what they're demanding. If you're gonna build it for me, I need this many parking spaces. They just
look at office, right?
The
Office
regulation level.
Yeah.
The regulation hasn't caught up with the technology there.
it's not even regulation. It was the demand of the people that were commissioning the building.
The understanding of the demand, right? Like office leading into this pandemic was, I want 6.5 spaces per 1,000 because I'm going to cram as many people into an office as we can get.
Good
And
point.
coming out of this, are we going to be at 6.5? Well, probably not, right? Who knows? But nobody's taking a forward-looking vision as to what parking demand is going to be as these things change. We're trying to think about it in the past.
I can use education as kind of someone to draw a parallel to. Like, we did our best, but I guarantee my kids didn't get as good of an education as they would have gotten had they been going to school every day. And I promise you, right? Sometimes mom was drinking at noon. It's the teacher was drunk at noon, right? That's what happens. I know.
I've met your kids.
I know it's a joke, but she really wasn't. Only one glass of wine at noon. But these are the things, right, that were going on. And so how many businesses are not doing as well? Because I promise you, there's a whole bunch of employees that all of a sudden got tossed into the, hey, you work from home and you need to be efficient from home, who had no idea how to do it.
Right.
And their coworkers weren't as available to them, and they really just did not get as much done. Or they weren't as disciplined to stay on task all day, which, and the 3 of us know, because we've always had these types of roles, is, it takes discipline to do that. So I think we come back more than we think we will to what it used to look like, because it worked well in a lot of ways.
It does, but I think it comes back a little differently. So instead of somebody having to go to the office 5 days a week, I think they go 2 to 3 days a week. Yeah, exactly. And you combine that with somebody else going the other 2 to 3 days a week, and so it kind of changes. And it reduces the I think corporations are going to realize if they can save $10,000 per person per year, $20,000 per person per year, to not bring them in every day and still get some level of productivity that gets them the profits that they're looking for. So it kind of changes it, but where that changes it is, we continue to see a decline in vehicle miles traveled and vehicle ownership, and in Brett Galvin's, futuristic world, there are people that are living there that don't have a car, that just use these automated jitneys to get around, and like that future is not far from us. We're definitely 10 years out from that, and it's how the industry now adapts to that from a technology, policy, management perspective that we can actually solve those things.
What are we looking at here, Brett?
So, yeah, thank you, Lester. Good. Yeah, the
I've been
culture
trying to figure it out all this
the,
whole
c-
time.
the culture of hot desking. I think the companies tried to push that for years and years and years, and it was rejected really at some levels. But now I guess it'll absolutely normalize. I wanted to
popular
go
again
back
all
to
of a
the
sudden.
the design of a garage and removing pedestrians or minimizing pedestrians inside the garage is a concept, and this is one ability where if the vehicle is a vehicle that doesn't drive itself inside the facility, this is a valet system, an automated valet system that picks up your vehicle and moves it around for you. So
Inside the garage.
inside the garage.
What's amazing about that is then you can start throwing out all of the configuration of garage design where you have to have
You stack
drive aisles, all this. I mean, it becomes it's incredible how much more you can get into those garages.
all
Just
the
height
striping.
requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you could completely get rid of the striping plans you have and rearrange it, ignore them completely. If it's completely controlled space, it ends up being a warehouse. You can even stack vehicles in particular ways, which you couldn't before. Again, I don't know how far along this technology is. It looks great on a graphic illustration of it.
I mean,
how
it's
it
not
pays off.
It's not far off from the automated garage of 8 years ago, where you basically had a platform go into the car and move it into a spot. I mean, now it's just a little bit more controlled from a valet perspective and the ability to get in and out. But I mean, that's not far off from automated garages that we were seeing in 2010.
Yeah, I mean, I got a chance to tour one of those, the one in Santa Monica there. It was pretty interesting to watch it working. And all the guys kept saying was, like, we had to overbuild the structure just to meet some semblance of code requirement. When really it's like there was no point in having floors in most of these places where the vehicle was. It really should have been like we didn't need all these, they literally had striping on the ground for like handicap walkways and like walkways inside this thing when it was never intended for anybody but a technician to be inside.
Right. Yeah.
The code's got to catch up on some of that stuff.
One of the ones that's big now is putting capacity for EV chargers in to your facility, but not putting in the charging stations yet, and trying to work out how that would happen. You look a decade out, the way electricity is distributed to a vehicle is probably not going to be through a charger. It's going to be through some other mechanism that can charge you on the fly, at a stop, fast charging, potentially utility driven from the municipality being the vendor that charges you as you're driving along, as you're stopping. I'm not sure.
I wanted to be a port on the front of the vehicle. When I pull into the space, I just
happens.
literally just like slip into this socket and it's done.
With phones, as you know, you can have a contactless charge, and it's a very similar device. The mechanism of agreeing to have a universal plug that everyone builds to, maybe it's a similar platform there that someone comes along and agrees to a contactless charging element. Yeah, interesting times.
No doubt.
What else, Lester? Where do you think you'll be in 10 years' time?
I mean, we're obviously going to keep trending towards just reducing friction and everything too. I still think that's, that'll become kind of the trend. Assuming, I don't think driverless cars, again, I've said this before, I'm probably pretty consistent on this. I think there'll be plenty available in 10 years, but I don't think they'll be at scale.
Nope. I'd agree with that.
It just, yeah. All the technology will be there. Everything will exist, but it'll be, in my opinion, it'll be 20 years before they're really 20 to 25. That sounds a long time away, but before they're like really at scale, where that's just the norm of what you buy. Maybe it's not quite that far out, but
I don't think it's that much different than electric.
What are the odds? What are the odds, Lester? I'll take a bet on it.
Yeah. What do you think?
A Google, a Tesla, an Apple comes along with a car that's roughly the same price, that works for a model of car share, that works for the majority of the older and elderly population to convert into easily. They come along with something that works, that's easy for people to understand. It disrupts pretty quick, I think. People love technology in a way that, I guess one of the parallels would maybe be the manual shift versus auto shift, and how quickly that took.
I think of electric vehicles in the late 90s, right? Like late 90s electric vehicles started coming along, and
there was a Mr. Rogers episode on electric vehicles.
Right. Ed Begley Jr. was driving around in electric vehicles in LA in the late 90s, and it took us until the mid 2010s for those to start seeing more widespread adoption. And granted, to your point, Brad, I mean, they weren't affordable. They were way more expensive than traditional, gas-powered automobiles. But I think there's going to be a little bit longer runway on the adoption.
I'll take a bet. I'm just saying. I'll be the.
You're gonna take the under, huh?
Yeah, it sounds like a good option. Good option.
There's 100% an acceleration factor to the technology and everything. I do think there's substantial infrastructure that has to be in place in order for that to work. I drove in a car that had the lane control, or whatever they call it, that helps you stay in your lane stuff. And it worked most of the time, but I'm driving down in Dulles, leaving Dulles Airport in my car, and they got snow on those roads a lot, and the paint doesn't stick to the road really well all over the place. And it worked really well until all of a sudden there was no paint on the road. And then all of a sudden the car just wandered out of the lane pretty quick. I don't know. There's work that needs to be done yet.
And the regulations around certification of those systems and making sure they're maintained appropriately, updated appropriately, where it's the after sales service aspect of it that's equally as interesting. And
I know it sounds silly, but if my car has a crash, is it my responsibility if I was sleeping?
This is a sort of thing that we'll take cues from.
Yep.
We'll take cues from other less regulated parts of the world who will happily live with the risk, and they'll work it out.
This is true.
This is an ecosystem. We've spent a decent chunk of time talking on this. Do you want to?
I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
I think there was Brett Wood there. I think you had one more thing you wanted to throw in there.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
You good? All right.
Yep.
Well, everybody, stay safe. We'll get through this. Hopefully we can return to as close to normal as we can, with lots of lessons learned that maybe move our society forward from the highlights and good things. Most importantly, if I have my vote of things that we get to keep, I would like for mixed drinks to go at bars to remain as something that's a thing. If we can keep that, I'll be really happy.
Aye. I'll take that. I will take that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And drinking beer in the parking lot outside of a restaurant, we'll take that one too.
The best thing is a 12-year-old bottle of scotch now will be a 22-year-old bottle of scotch in 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's true. Very good. All right, guys. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Talk soon. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Happy 4th of July.
Thank you for listening to the Parker X podcast. We sincerely appreciate it and hope you are enjoying our content. Please remember to rate, review, comment, subscribe, and share. And follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The following has been a production of Parker X.